Hello and welcome to the Postscript, a podcast about films whose discourse ended with an ellipsis rather than a period. My name is Chris Hall. I am one of your hosts.
I am Sebastian.
And I'm Mateo.
And we are all good friends who met each other at a film club at the University of Florida, which we all attended and have since graduated from. And we are all filmmakers now pursuing careers in film. On this podcast, we will be reassessing films of recent memory where the discourse was left unsettled. We will try to provide more definitive takes on films that generated a lot of buzz upon release, but their reputations have since become kind of murky. Movies that make us ask, like, where are they now? What do people actually think about these movies? Like, what does this mean to you guys specifically?
It's kind of like a heat check.
Yeah, it's like we don't know. Maybe we don't know how good this guy is. But it's kind of it's a contract year for this movie.
You don't really see people like dropping rewatches for these movies in 2023. Like they don't come up. Like
it's like regardless of quality, they've maybe dropped out of the zeitgeist in a way, or maybe they've reappeared in the zeitgeist, but for in unexpected ways, right?
I mean, it's why we're bravely taking the initiative to do the job for y'all.
Yeah. I know we are pioneers. We are we are brave soldiers, doing the thankless job of talking about movies and forming opinions for you guys, so you don't have to. But so an important note, at the beginning of each podcast, we will have a spoiler-free discussion of the selected film. Okay, so we will talk about it before we have rewatched said film of episodes. So we'll give like an oral history of the discourse surrounding the film and why we chose the film in the first place. And then we'll watch the film. We'll have a little intermission, and at that point, you can decide like if you want to watch the film too, if you want to rewatch, and then engage in the like post game discussion. So in the second half of the podcast, probably the last like 40 minutes, that will be spoiler heavy. We'll dive in. That'll be the deep dive, and we'll really assess where we think this film lies in terms of quality, its place in the culture, all these different things. So you can listen guilt-free with a clear conscience to the beginning of this, and then decide later if you want to dive in, right?
I was going to say, we're also very much going through these experiences in an effort to possibly rediscover what our own opinions on these movies are. So we'll be discussing at the beginning in the pregame about what we think of these movies. And then afterwards, once, there's the intermission, when we have seen it for the second time, most of these movies I'm going to believe are going to be rewatches for us that we'll be kind of discussing. Has anything changed since that first time we watched it? There's
right.
A lot of these movies are going to be, it's been a while since we've seen them. We're trying to put a limit. They're not going to be super recent movies that, there's been some time for some discourse to have gone on and possibly die down.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to kind of remove ourselves from like the moment of the film, be like, okay, let's just like, no rose-colored lens, or the invert of that, maybe no, negative biases, just like what actually is this movie, okay,
right,
because it can really get fogged up by the discourse of the time. And I'm sure there will be exceptions in the future, but yeah, I think most of the films probably will be from the 21st century, because most films like pre-21st century, like either the consensus is made, it's like, yeah, we all know how we feel, or there was just no discourse in the first place. Like, it's like that, like, there's no real middle ground, because what we're trying to get at is the gray area, like is that weird murky middle ground,
No, yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I'm excited to talk about the movie that we got lined up.
Yeah. Excited, yeah, because and we want to be picking films that we feel like, again, these had discourse, like you either saw it yourself or people you did, like you heard people talking about it, and so
award bait movies, a lot of these are going to be award bait type movies.
Yeah, because that's because so much of award season in the Oscars is like the moment, the narrative of the film, the surrounding the film, like in the moment, and all these things. So I'm really excited to dive in. I know this is a movie that us three did all see. I presume we all saw it in the theaters upon release.
Yes.
And most of you guys did too, and I will say most of you did. This movie made bonkers money, which we will come back to. But without further ado, today's episode, I mean, you already saw the episode title, but drum roll, please. Is Alfonso Cuaron's 2013 film Gravity.
Explorer's been hit. Explorer, do you read? Explorer, over, Explorer. Astronaut is off structure. Dr. Stone is off structure. Dr. Stone is detached. You must detach. If you don't detach, that arm's going to carry you too far. Listen to my voice. You need to focus. I'm losing visual of you. In a few seconds, I won't be able to track you. You need to detach. I can't see you anymore. Do it now.
Oh, the slide in
With
set
the
with the
DVD slide.
with the DVD slide in visually.
Yeah.
Let's go. We are physical media enjoyers on this
Oh.
on this
Yes, sir.
podcast.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
But yes, this was the 2013 science fiction film that follows two astronauts, played by Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, who attempt to return to Earth after the destruction of their space shuttle in orbit. So, Gravity. Why are we talking about this movie? Why are we doing this? I want to give just like a little oral history of Gravity first, okay? Because like the first thing I want to say about this film is that upon release, this movie was as successful as a movie could possibly be on any metric. Okay, we'll just start critically. All right, I'll throw some numbers at you guys. All right, so Rotten Tomatoes got a 96%. Okay, and I know there's some people with some hesitations with that review aggregate site. I totally understand all of that. I'm sure we'll have a deeper conversation later, but 96 is like there were 4% of critics who didn't like the movie. Okay, it's a pretty irrefutable number. And the Metacritic also 96. And for those who aren't,
That's crazy to me because that's like The Godfather gets
Yeah.
96. Like,
Yeah, that's nutty numbers.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with Metacritic, like if you're in the 90s, like holy smokes, like you can retire like that. Like
Yeah.
it is you get maybe one or two films a year that get, I would say, a 90 or above on Metacritic. And that, for those who are really unaware, Metacritic pools usually 50-ish critics of kind of the more well-known like publishers and newspapers and websites, as opposed to Rotten Tomatoes, who have like hundreds from just like if you have a blog with like more than 3 posts, you can probably get your review on Rotten Tomatoes.
The John Campias of the world.
Yeah. So Metacritic, it's like it's like your USA Today's, your New York Times, all these things, and the number is from the actual like rating that the critics give it. It's more of an average. There's a lot of other sabermetric weirdness that goes into that Metacritic number, but 96 is bonkers. For reference, 96 was tied for the third highest Metacritic score of any movie in the 2010s. Like it is very, very high. And it's funny, it's tied with like a couple other films, one of which is Roma, which is another Alfonso Cuaron. Alfonso Cuaron's other movie from the 2010s. So he's kind of cracked for that, as one might say. Like you can't really have a much better decade than that. And at the time, again, critics were gushing over this film. Like one quote from a review that I read recently, in prep for this, they said, in a little more than 90 minutes, Gravity rewrites the rules of cinema as we have known them. Bro, like what?
That is
a lot of weight behind these words, and there's a ton of praise from directors as well. Because I've heard so many times directors be like, I don't know how Alfonso made this movie. I don't know how he made it's just a feat of filmmaking. And then James Cameron, Big Jim himself, he said, quote, "I think it's the best space photography ever done. I think it's the best space film ever done. And it's the movie I've been hungry to see for an awful long time." This movie was being talked about like it was the second coming.
That's that praise coming from James Cameron, who with Avatar kind of wrote the book on that super heavy CGI action filmmaking.
100%. And that's
shocking.
and that leads me into another fact that blew my mind. You set me up perfectly. So 60% of Avatar was CGI. Gravity, 80%. Gravity was more CGI than the CGI movie, which is crazy. And I think that's something we'll be returning to a lot in kind of the deeper discussion of the film. It's whether or not we saw the seams of the movie, and because I feel like I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I feel like this might be a movie that its strengths are in how invisible some of the visuals and the filmmaking is. It's like the fact that we can't see the seams is kind of why it's so good, especially if it's 80% CGI. And the discourse around CGI and VFX has ramped up a lot, I feel like, in recent memory, that's especially in the age of Marvel. But and then on the same part, with movies like Oppenheimer that are trying to flex almost how little CGI or VFX it has. But moving on from that, the film garnered 10 Oscar nominations and won 7. It won Best Director, which was the first of 2 for Cuaron, who also won for Roma later in the decade. It won Best Cinematography, which was the first of cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki's three-peat. He won in Gravity for 2013, Birdman the next year, and then The Revenant the next year.
Yeah.
I can say this might not be the last time we talk about those 2 following films.
Yes.
Maybe we just go through Lubezki's filmography, like, because maybe that's just the blueprint for this podcast. It won Best Editing. It also won Best Score, which it has to be addressed. I'm sure the score is great, but no matter how much I or we all adore this film post rewatch, like, it will never be okay that it beat the score for Her and at the Oscars this year. That, I'm sorry, but like not only was Her in my mind the best score that year, like that was one of the best just like albums of music.
Audiophile
from
Chris is in shambles right now.
Like, that is like, if any of the listeners, like, if your Spotify Wrapped was just like smothered in just the Gravity score, please reach out. You know, like, that's like, I want to pick your brain, but like,
I was just gonna say that I do remember there is one track at the end of the movie that I absolutely adore from Gravity, but that versus all of Her is still a crime against humanity.
Like her is like as good as music can be sometimes. Like, again, it's like, I know I'm speaking very in superlative right now, but like, I just freaking love that album, and like, I will try not to hold it against Gravity that the Academy awarded over Her. I just had to address that. Her is a very, very important piece of music to and very important film to me, and I know you guys as well. It also won Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Visual Effects, kind of swept at the below the line, as one might expect, because, you know, this was such a technically proficient movie. So yeah, critically, I mean, just a perfect report card, complete aces, all these things. And financially, I thought this was really, really fascinating. So the budget for this film was $100 million. I was talking to Seb the other day because I saw how much money it made, and I was like, I need you to throw a guess at me right now. Seb did not know. Seb guessed. You said like $150 million or something like that.
I said
which
150.
is reasonable. We're like a prestige awards baity, we'll say, even if it's a science fiction film, a movie like that, that's not like an unreasonable guess. And then Mateo doubled down.
The other
like,
way.
Yeah, but Mateo said 700. He went 700 million for the box office revenue, and he may be thinking, like, what was Mateo on thinking that, like, that is just a wild number. The movie,
it's George Clooney and Sandra Bullock. I mean,
I mean, taking back to the age of movie stars, the movie made $720 million.
Yes,
which is absolutely bonkers. Original film, original story, not IP, not franchise. Just 2 actors people like and a good freaking filmmaker, guys. Like, that's like that.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's all it takes.
And to be fair, kind of a gimmick premise.
Sure.
The gimmick premise definitely got asses.
Very genre. I mean, you just have to know space movie with Sandy. You know, it's a space movie with Sandy and George. Seb, jaw ajar right now. It's just a 1,000-yard stare. I know, like, for reference, like, The Batman made like $750 million. Like, that's like, you know, like, it is, especially now that we're so deep into the age of Marvel, a movie like this making that much money, like, is like capital B bonkers. Like, that's amazing. I mean, that's it. I mean, inspiring.
I feel like I remember at the time the movie having that kind of like,
it kind of had that juice.
Swagger.
No, like, and I
mean, the CinemaSins video, which, like, you know, CinemaSins in 2013, they were the big dogs. Like, they got Neil deGrasse Tyson on the episode for Gravity. Like,
that's right.
I remember that.
We're gonna circle back to that, I'm sure, of how the science community reacted to this movie. That's a whole other branch of
that might actually be a benchmark. That might be a benchmark of where it all went wrong.
Yeah, that might have weirdly been the turning point. And and we could have a whole episode on the way CinemaSins just like poisoned the brains of like movie watchers for the following decade.
It set us back for like 5 years.
Seriously. And quick Chris anecdote. I just remembered this. This movie came out in 2013, so I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. rare middle school Chris dub. I remember, I don't know what else was at the time. I don't know what else was out. It may have been like a Hunger Games movie or something else at the time that was like appealed very much.
It would have been the first Hunger Games movie.
Oh, was it the first?
Yeah, it probably would have been.
Okay. If it was, we'll go with that for the sake of the story. I remember I was hanging out with some friends. We had like a classic middle school sleepover. Like vibes were immaculate, and we all wanted to see the movie that next Saturday. And I think they were all pining to see the Hunger Games, but I somehow, it was like 12 Angry Men. I somehow like single-handedly like flipped the entire room and got all of us to go see Gravity instead. I don't know why I was operating with such conviction. Maybe I just did not want to see Hunger Games, but like a very rare base middle school Chris moment. Like I was kind of cooking. And yeah, like it was, and we all loved it. Like it was an amazing experience. Like it freaking ruled. Like
yeah.
It was an awesome movie. And even then, remind me to circle back on this point of what even I thought leaving theater at that time, because it's my leading into why the discourse is the way it is. And actually, I'll tee it up a little bit. I do remember even at the time thinking, I was like, that was awesome. And I think a little bit about with Avatar as well. And maybe there's some relationship there. I remember thinking, I was like, that ruled, but like, I feel like I can't watch that outside of the theater. Like, I feel like even like 13-year-old me was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to watch this in my living room. Like this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
And that might be we'll put a pin in that and come back later. So we just spent the last several minutes talking about like how universally loved this movie was. So you might be thinking, so like where's the gray area? Like what is there to discuss? Like why did we choose this episode? You know, because aside from like a best picture one, like this movie conquered like the world, you know, like this there was nothing left for this movie to accomplish, right? And that's also kind of why Cuaron had like unprecedented freedom when making Roma for Netflix. Like that's a crazy thing to read about. It's like Netflix gave like no notes on the script. Like no one on set had even like read the script or something before filming. It was like they literally just said like here's a blank check, just make a movie, and he made Roma. And I mean there are very few people who give that much freedom to, and Cuaron's one of them. So why Gravity? Even with all of the impressive statistics I threw at you, the average rating on Letterboxd, which is a newer movie rating platform, is only a 3.5 out of 5, right? And it's important to say that user ratings as a reference or as like evidence of any kind can be kind of fraught and unreliable, you know, and is usually used as like confirmation bias more than anything else. But in this case, like I feel like with how recent, you know, with how new the app is and how recent a lot of those ratings have to be, I feel like that does help paint a picture of what the current perception of this movie is. Like it was being praised as like apex mountain for cinema, like upon release, and now it's like 7 out of 10 for a lot of folks, you know?
Yeah.
And my feed personally is just like littered with 3 and 3.5 out of 5 star ratings. And it wasn't on a ton of end of decade lists either. So I wonder with you guys, like how is this movie in your eyes nowadays? Like where does it lie in your experience, you know, with other people?
Well, not just that, I wanted to a little expand upon, you know, how movie fans would typically have like their top 5, or like they'll debate what's this director's list, you know, like how would you rank, you know, their filmography.
Oh, right, yeah.
Cuaron, like you will almost like everyone will have Gravity now at the bottom of his filmography.
That's a good point. Yeah. No one's just Gravity 1. No,
right. Like if you said Gravity 1, you might get like slapped in the face. Like it's
definitely
you're asking for trouble.
They might look at you like you have a third eye. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, even with us, like that was, sorry to cut you off, Mateo, but like it with us, as soon as Gravity was brought up as an option for the first episode, it was like we all simultaneously knew this had to be the one, because there's been such a weird transition with this film over time, and it's not been like
apathy.
Right. And there was nothing that specifically, like there was no moment that happened to this film. There was no controversy. There was no like, oh, this actor did something, the director did something, and now the film's tainted. You know, it's more of just, as the years go on, people want to think about and talk about it less, and which made us want to talk about it more.
Right.
So,
and that became the sweet spot for this pod. Yeah. Mateo, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, like, to me, it's like, it's not even that. I mean, like, obviously, I think the critical reputation has like maybe like declined a little bit, but also like, I don't think anybody even talks about it. It's just like, it like it disappeared. Like it feels like it was like exiled or something. Like, and I don't really.
And it didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, it did. It did. According to the numbers, it did everything right. You know.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fascinating about it is that like, and I was looking at the reviews too, because again, it's like I feel like if you ask someone like, if you ask these folks that are being like, yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for Gravity, they'll say like, I mean, yeah, it's technically impressive, but like, you know, but that's about it. When I was reading back the reviews on the time, almost every single critic, almost everyone was like going out of their way to say, yes, this is an achievement technically. There was always a comma, but like it's the emotions, it's the storytelling, it's the performances, it's everything like else is coming through. Like all of that is spectacular, you know? Like the whole, oh, this movie didn't age well because the story isn't there. That conversation wasn't really happening. Like that wasn't happening upon release. Everyone's like, no, this is good at everything, you know? And this, so absolutely. I have a theory as to why maybe it's fallen off, as to why it is the way that it is nowadays. But what do you guys think about that?
I think that the comma but is something people turned against the film. That they heard all these things about a story, and then they'd like all of a sudden be like, what story? It's just people like flying through space, dodging debris. And you look at them like, well, it's a character study, or it's a character movie.
Personal,
it's like that's the story.
Okay.
And that was the debate that I used to have back in 2014, like 14, 15-year-old me would have these debates.
Yeah, when you're in the trenches,
it's Sandra Bullock's movie, is it not? And they're like, no, it's an action film about space debris. So I think that there was always kind of like an intertangling of like, some people just weren't gripped by what Cuaron was trying to do with the film. And if I remember correctly, and what the cover tells us, there is a much more deeper character arc going on in the film than someone just surviving in space.
Exactly. That's a good read. The whole, some people being like, oh, where's the plot and all these things, and that even though that is where the critics may have pivoted, being like, that's why it's good, is because it's such a personal journey. Like he's finding the humanity. You know, Mateo, what about you?
Also, I mean, like I think part of it is that I think just like we're also looking at like Alfonso Cuaron, a director who like it drops like in the 21st century, like drops a movie like every 5 to 7 years. He doesn't work that much. And kind of the last like critical like darling success for the two, like for like those two like movie stars like Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, like obviously they still act, and I still love them. I still think they're great, but like they have not, I don't think either one of them has had a project that is, I don't know, like the average like young person is not like thinking about like going to go see the George Clooney movie.
That's a really good read. It's like, that's a really good point, because I was looking at Sandra,
as much as I love photography,
Sandra Bullock like doesn't act. So the silent majority of Ticket to Paradise stands is
yes, sir.
Mateo, we saw the empty row that was designated for Ticket to Paradise Blu-rays at Target. It was empty. People are out there.
Yes, sir. We did.
It was. That's a good point. But Sandra Bullock, like, she's come back more in the last year or so, but like hasn't had that many roles since this movie. And like Clooney is like, he's still Clooney, but again, he's, you know, not as much in the conscious. Like Cuaron, he's not like film guys, like, you know, people into film like know like if a Cuaron project's happening because he's like amazing. But again, he's not cranking out projects, and again, also in the public consciousness. That's a great read as well. It's just like these people just, like, aren't super active, you know, and like and as a result, like, if their names were coming up more, we'd probably be referencing their past works more, and that would include Gravity, and that's just like another symptom, you know. And I think when I mentioned earlier how like even young me was like, I don't know if I can like watch this again unless it's in the theater, you know. I think because we've already made some comparisons to Avatar already, and also upon the reviews in the time, you know, along with the, you know, all the praise for the emotions in the story and the technical aspects, it's like there were people who were just like, this is this is a must-see theater experience. See this on the biggest screen possible and all that. And you know, and those semantics, those words are used with Avatar a lot as well. And I'm thinking maybe it's like, maybe the way it's fallen out of the modern discourse or like modern, you know, conversation and culture and all that is kind of the thing, is like Avatar, they are both almost designed to exist maybe solely in the movie theater. It's like these things are like, it's like these things are meant to be experienced fully, like is a full course meal in the theater. It's like you get everything you need from being in that room, and it's like and like it's not existed in like the what ifs or the things on the margins or like the like theories on, like these are not theory movies, they're not Screen Rant article movies like biggest what the F questions from Gravity. It's just like these are not theory, and all this applies to Avatar as well. These are such visceral
sensory bombardment,
sensory theater experiences that like, and maybe that like locks them to the moment, because it's not like you can just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go see Gravity this weekend in the theater. It's like, no, that's not how that works. It's like it had its time frame, and maybe that's just that, like, and maybe almost the movie is content in not having like discourse nowadays other than just being universally known as good, but the heartbreaking aspect of that is the way people have become more apathetic, due to lack of conversation. So
that description you were doing there for a second about a full course meal and just for the theaters felt like it was teetering on what Scorsese calls theme park movies. And but then you pulled back and said that it's not a Screen Rant top 5 question movie, which is exactly what the theme park Marvel movies are.
Yes.
So like it's,
I appreciate that, because it's still, because it's not just and that's where the critics praise the movie. It's not just a thrill ride, and there is a value to like being thrilled for 2 hours straight, but it's an emotional, like,
you're thrilled because you want Sandra Bullock to make it.
No, exactly. Like you are feeling like a nuanced emotions, and even Mr. New York Times was like, it's rewriting the rules of cinema. Like, it's like it is, it's pushing. It was A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
A.O. Scott,
he was cooking. And so, there's admiration for the way it was playing with just the medium, with movie making as a whole, which again separates it from the theme park thing, because no one's, as someone who has and tries to find enjoyment in Marvel movies, like you're not like. Yeah, like you're not like, how are we like reinventing the wheel, with the Marvels? It's like, like that's.
Well, that's you're also not jumping out of your seat when Sandra Bullock grabs the cord,
theater reacts to George Clooney first line in Gravity. Yeah,
is George Clooney worthy to pick up Mjolnir?
Yeah.
Discussion.
Top 10 Gravity characters that could pick up Mjolnir. Yeah. Top 2 Gravity characters that might defeat Thanos. That could defeat Thanos. Yeah.
The voice over the comms back in Houston. That's one of the characters.
That voice actually appeared in comic issue 41. He's like, and he might get his own Disney Plus 6 episode of that. Gosh dang it, we've been poisoned. But so okay. And any last words on what we're hoping from this rewatch, and how again, we talked about the theater experience, how we intend to engage with this rewatch. What are you guys thinking?
I'm excited. If I come out of it and I give it like a clean 4 stars, I'll be like, yeah, man.
Gravity, man.
That's what I want. I just don't want it. I don't want to be disappointed. Oh man, I don't want to be disappointed by this.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I go in and like there's like that pit in my stomach where it's like it wasn't as good as I remembered, I'm gonna be a little bummed going into the post watch. But I don't think that's gonna happen. From what I remember, the beats that this movie hits, I think it's gonna be a really like amazing rewatch.
Right.
So.
No, I appreciate it. Okay, we all wanna enjoy this, And when I see all the praise it received at the time, the things critics were saying, I'm like, they said this for a reason, man. Like they weren't like it wasn't like big cinema is trying to corrupt, like they weren't paying off these critics to say these things, Yeah. And so obviously none of us will be able to watch this in a theater in the next 48 hours. But yeah, I'm thinking but I will make sure to try and watch this at night. This is definitely not. I mean, again, I think if you watch this during the day, you're sick. Like this is like if there's,
picture, yeah.
if there's glare on your TV watching Gravity, it's like, bro, it's like that is not the movie's fault. Like that is
you're fighting the movie at that point.
no, yeah. I'll
Yeah.
make sure I have some good headphones on. Or you know, if I had a good soundboard, that'd work as well. Get a noise complaint from the neighbors. Get that award-winning score bumping, you know. Gosh,
give it a chance. That's all I'll say. Give it a chance.
Can you imagine if I just heel turn and I'm just like, oh, I get it. I see. Like this is like, I'm gonna learn it all in piano. I don't even know what instrument the score uses. Like I'm learning all the piano. I started YouTube.
Okay, honestly, legitimately,
piano
the only
covers
thing
of the
I
Gravity
remember,
score. Yeah.
the only thing I remember about Gravity is just, I don't want to spoil it, but I just remember at the very end of the movie, just catching my breath for a second at the end. That's all.
That goes
I don't
hard.
think I can remember like any specific plot details. I maybe remember like one line of dialogue, and that's
No, it's fair. I remember, yeah, again, when I had all the 7th grade homies pulling up, I do remember the movie starting, and it starts with these, like, I think these, like, swelling strings. Again, it's been so long. I remember, like, being really nervous in my seat for some reason. I was like, bro, like, is my heart about to beat out my chest? Like, is this, like, what, like, did I lead the friends astray? Like, is this gonna be too intense? But no, baby, it was awesome. But yeah, okay, so what we're gonna do now, you know, sometime in the very near future, probably in the next, you know, 24, 48 hours, we will all watch this movie. We'll have a little intermission, and when we come back, we will discuss the film. So this marks the end of like the spoiler-free conversation, and hopefully you guys want to watch the movie too and listen to the second half. If
it
not,
will be 48 hours closer to death when you see us again.
yeah, that
Well,
sure. What? Maybe my heart will beat through my chest with Gravity. Maybe this movie will send me into cardiac arrest. If that's the case, 5 stars. I mean, it has to, like, if a movie has a health effect on you, minimum 5 stars. So yeah, okay. Thank you all. If you've listened this far already, thank you so much. And we hope to see you on the other side. Okay.
Adios.
Alrighty. See you guys in a minute. And we're back. Okay, us three have returned safely from the ISS station.
Yes.
We are the sole survivors of this fatal debris incident. And we've been given a second chance at life to discuss our thoughts on this movie, which I am very amped to talk about. Okay, so us three have all given Gravity a rewatch. Like I think all of our first since 2013. Like
Yeah,
since then. And us three have like minimally discussed our thoughts about it. We've kind of kept to ourselves. We slept on it. We gave it 24 hours. All we know is just what each other put on Letterboxd. That's it, and that's about it. So we'll just start with some general thoughts. So how about
spoiler heavy, by the way.
We are diving into spoilers. We are diving into spoilers. This is a deep dive for Gravity.
Yeah.
So Mateo, start us off.
Okay, I just want to say, I mean, George Clooney. Instantly, like, I mean, is there anybody else in the 21st century who could have done that role as well as he did?
No, not a chance.
I am so glad you are starting here. I at one point, if there was a lull in the conversation, I was just gonna go. The 2013 nominees for Best Supporting Actor were Jonah Hill for Wolf of Wall Street, Michael Fassbender for 12 Years a Slave, Bradley Cooper for American Hustle, Barkett Abdi for Captain Phillips, and Jared Leto, who won for Dallas Buyers Club. There was room for George. Like there was room for George in there. Like
George deserved it.
He was so good in this, so much better than I remember. It's like perfect line reading after perfect line reading. He is amazing.
And it's also like, if there's anybody that you want to be like the voice in your ear, like keeping you calm,
oh my
like
gosh,
walking you through this like terrifying ordeal, it's George Clooney. Like it's the casting is perfect, and 100%. Then he just executes it like effortlessly well, which is, you know, I guess what he's famous for. It's just incredible. Like
1000%. That's something Sandra Bullock, like I saw in an interview she said from the time, like she said that George has that voice that quote, everything's going to be okay. You know, like he's he is that like emotional crutch, like voice in ear. So then when he like inevitably like departs from the film, it's like you feel it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean this is absolutely a hot take, but it's my favorite George Clooney performance. Like it solidified it for me. And I know that is like an absolute crazy take, but it's as a personal thing. His vibes in this film are immaculately perfect. Like he just makes me feel at home, and like it's
No,
perfect.
he's like
No,
a warm
yeah,
blanket of a character, but not in a
exactly.
like, oh, this is a perfect human being. Like he's still very much like a person, you know. He's not just like an ideal of a character, but like
Yeah.
he is. I
Yeah.
mean, he's so amazing. Definitely a top 2 space George Clooney performance between this and
That and
Solaris.
Solaris, yeah. So
Which
Solaris.
if we have time at the end, some Solaris thoughts. But of course, like we can't talk about Clooney, of course, without talking about Sandra Bullock. And like I don't know what else there is to say other than like if Sandra Bullock isn't like wholly believable in this movie, the movie probably doesn't work. Like, like
Yeah.
she kind of has to be perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like there was like that whole like joke throughout 2022, like of people talking about like how Puss in Boots 2 has like a really realistic depiction of a panic attack.
Yeah.
And then I'm like watching this movie now. I'm like, wait, that's kind of what Sandra's doing. Like, it really does. She really is selling it, and like,
Yeah.
you're just alone with her the whole time, and like, she's kind of like talking to herself. And I think at the beginning, I was thinking like, okay, this is like a little like hacky that she keeps talking to herself. But as the movie goes on, I'm realizing I'm like, no, wait, she's just trying to keep herself calm. Like,
Insane.
Trying to stay
Yeah.
sane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
especially when
like,
she loses George, she like kind of has to like
it's
because George is talking
Yeah.
for her and stuff. Yeah,
it's such a believable interpretation. I really like over time, I think, started to like click so much with her character. Like, such a great
Absolutely.
performance.
100%. No, yeah, well said.
My biggest thing, and this will probably be for a lot of the movies that we end up doing, but I thought the screenplay is what stood out to me the most on rewatch. I was almost floored by some of like the lines that I was hearing. Well, because what I genuinely thought it was mostly going to be a visual fest. That's what I was preparing
Yes.
myself for.
Me too.
And we joked about the wine not beer line before, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of things. There's a specific line reading that Sandra has when she's explaining the death of her child, and there's that really calm moment, I think, before everything really goes wrong again, where they're having this heart to heart. He's trying to figure, like, kind of dig deep into, like, you can almost even see the reasoning behind why George is doing this. Like, he's like, I need her to find something back on Earth to keep fighting for, to get back to. Like, I need like to like dig in here because she seems really lost right now. And when she starts talking about how her child died and how she fell over, she just says like the stupidest thing. Like
Yeah.
she just calls it the stupidest thing. And it's the way she trails off after saying that, like, that that's literally just how she's seen life from that exact moment, that like anything can end it all at any moment.
Just crap comes at you for like seemingly no reason. Yeah.
No, I mean,
just
that
like
whole
the space
sequence-
debris.
No, yeah, that's something Cuaron said. Yeah, the debris is like metaphorical, yeah, just for all the obstacles and like quite literally crap that life throws at you, and you just
it is a quietly symbolic film. Like,
yes,
with the debris, like there's like a lot of like the exploration of like there's like the whole visual of like the ISS getting like torn apart by debris. It's so like it's actually like very beautiful, but it's also like fatal, and like it's gonna kill them all, but like it's also like beautiful in like this really like twisted sense. Like,
no, the VFX boys were dapping each other up the entire time while making this movie.
I was really struck, like, like I think like I kind of get like the why people like reacted to that movie the way they did, because like it's not just the visuals, it's like what the visuals are like serving for the
100%,
like
100%.
It is like it's a much like deeper, more like interesting film than I remembered.
Well, I would have almost characterized it as a horror film in a lot of ways. Like it really felt closer to like an atmospheric horror rather than just like, oh, we're focusing on a character.
Yeah, or if like the debris is like it's like a slasher movie and the debris is like the killer, you know? It's like, and
Yes.
it's just
Yeah.
like it's just
There's literally a
coming and coming.
timer.
Yeah.
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 It is. Before I wanna get into the CGI in that conversation too, because I think you do a really good point of saying how it's not just like oh, it looks nice. There's so much intention and meaning behind it. But one last note on the script, and I'm so glad you mentioned that scene when she's talking about her daughter, because I remember watching that. Like, that is, even at the time back in like 2013 watching it, it's like that is something that did stick with me out of the movie, is just the way she talks about it, and how it's just how simply written that is. And she's just like, she fell and hit her head. It was so stupid. And I'm like, and that like really struck a chord with 13-year-old me at the time. I'm like, wow, like that is quietly profound and heartbreaking. But it's an overused term, but like this really is one of the most economic scripts I've ever seen in my mind.
Yes.
Like
also,
yeah,
Gravity's 90, like it's like 90 minutes long.
90 minutes.
Yes.
We don't see that anymore. Like,
it blasts through all the plot exposition, all the character development. Like, it's just so it's so sufficient in all of those regards. Like, and again, so tightly paced, which says, you know, a lot about the editing and the directing too. Because I mean, holy smokes, like that first hour is quintessential no bathroom break filmmaking. Like, that is if you're checking your phone during that first hour, like, you're a sicko. Like, that is like holy smokes. And like, and before we get deeper in the CGI, I guess just like in terms of my general thoughts on it, if we're just kind of starting general, is that this movie is just like it just feels undeniable in so many ways, and it just feels like everything a genre film should be. And like, in like holistically speaking, it's like, I know there are other space movies, but like there's nothing quite like this movie. Like, there wasn't anything quite like it before, and 10 years removed, there hasn't really been anything quite like it since. You know, like there's some sequence. It's like Interstellar and Ad Astra have some sequences that maybe resemble. It's
I
like
was gonna mention Ad Astra is probably the closest attempt to do something like Gravity, but
right.
Still.
With the sequence, which again, like, mixed thoughts on Ad Astra. Maybe we revisit that one day. But the scene when he literally falls from outer space, he just falls. The human falls from outer space back into the atmosphere. Unreal. And that has some Gravity vibes. But like, that being said, like, this is a one of a kind film, and I almost want to just like sit in that for a sec. It's like the value to that. It's like like, this is a film in many ways no peer, and that is just something that like cannot be
directed by
granted.
such a singular voice, right? Like
100%.
Yeah, like
it is such an achievement, which makes the apathy we've discussed like almost heartbreaking, because it's like, guys, it's like this. It's like we don't have to be getting movies like this, you know. Like, I would love to live in a world where we have more stuff like this, you know, or such singular works. And it's just like effortlessly doing stuff you've just never seen before, and you just like haven't really seen since. And it's just, again, it's like so much of this movie is so easy to fall apart at any moment, but it's just so tight. It's just like it's like a Jenga tower, and it's like one wrong block, and it's like, oh, this movie just like a house of cards is just done.
Yeah, I want to comment, because I think I mentioned this in the pre-show. Before we watched the movie, but I was really interested to see what the cinematography was going to look like. And let me say, I mean, the digital filmmaking in space, like the way the light, the way the like grain of the film looks, like everything about it, it's like delectable. It's the only word that I can think of. Like, it is
great
like,
word.
Ugh, it's just, it's perfect. It's perfect. It could not have been better than that.
Olympian.
Well, a lot of oneers, like just one takes, and camera following, but one of the most unforced like segments of oneers that you will ever see. Like, so necessary and effortless too, because it's not like, oh, I'm gonna keep latching onto a subject and just follow that. The camera moves with such purpose. And that
100%.
really helps you as an audience member feel like I'm being taken on a journey by a trusted individual, a trusted auteur who knows where like I want to put you emotionally.
And
so
I read something so cool about the light in that movie, and like how they lit it with like individual LEDs, because like that's kind of the way that like light in space is just kind of unfiltered. Like there's no
Ooh.
atmosphere, there's no scattering.
Mm.
So like the way that like light interacts with the characters in that movie, like it's like so like kind of like bright and distinct and clear. Like that lighting is just, it's so incredible. Like I really think that like there's so many wrong ways to go with that, and like
Yeah.
it could have looked really like murky and like bland and just kind of ugly. And
Yeah.
I think it nailed it. I think it really nailed it.
I fully agree. You guys are taking the words out of my mouth, and I'm so glad you praised the wonders for their intention and all that, because that was one of the notes I wrote, is that these are not wonders for the sake of wonders. Like these are not trying to be showy. Like because Alfonso Cuaron, his film before this was Children of Men in 2007, and that movie, a lot of the praise did come for its its long take action sequences. Cuaron is no stranger to long takes, and he really doubles down on it here. And that first shot, the opening shot of the movie, there is not a cut until the 13-minute mark, and it totally
Unbelievable.
It just you become fully absorbed into the film because of that, and these wonders, like the way it communicates the scope, and like your as the viewer, your spatial awareness during all of these scenes is absolutely immaculate because of the way the camera is moving, and it's just like it's always going to the place it needs to be. Like it is absolutely remarkable, and it helps with the pacing, and part of the reason they filmed it in this way, Sandra Bullock said that like part of the reason they did these wonders was she said it doesn't give you the chance to like catch your breath or like almost catch up with your feelings. Like there are no cuts. She's like there aren't cuts in real life. Like you just keep going, and then it like forces you to stick with it. No, yeah, I thought that was awesome. And one other thing in the cinematography that I made a note of, that this is just a Hall of Fame POV movie. Like the POV shots.
I was just going to start mentioning that.
Are doing the first person, like Sandra Bullock point of view shots are just doing the Lord's work in this film. Like it is truly amazing, because so much of what this film is trying to do is trying to make it feel like like you are there, like you are in peril, you are alone in space right now. And and it's not showy. It's not doing it for the sake of being flashy. It is all with intention, and it's just like so utterly effective and dread-inducing and anxiety-inducing. It's
I gotta say, I don't know. I mean, I'm not super sure how I felt about some of the first person. Some of it I think worked, and some of it was like, I don't know. I was a little less like universal on some of the first person, but
the first use of it, when the camera follows Sandra into her helmet when she's spinning, that was the best use of it, in my opinion.
Because you're spinning with her.
Yes. Oh no, that was like genuinely nauseating. Yeah.
That is, they'll show you that in a film class. Like that is, I mean, because like what better way than to like communicate nausea and disorientation than to give it to you. And that was another thing I wrote. It's just like, if the camera isn't moving as masterfully as it is, like, or if you're shooting these scenes in almost any other way, like it's going to be disorienting in the bad way. Like this movie, when it wants to disorient you, it will, and it's intentional and it's good and effective. But otherwise, it's like there's a version of this movie where you're like, I don't know what I'm watching right now. Like where are the people? Like even when George Clooney's off camera, like you know where he is, and it's just
that's really that's down to Cuarón being such a good director and knowing where everything is kind of taking place and putting it all together so well.
No, I'm on board with you what you were saying, Mateo, about the first person shots, that not all of it was working for me, because at times, and this is maybe just the gamer part of me coming out, but like I did feel like, the jumping around and feeling a little bit more like an action set piece, trying to like grab onto stuff. I'm just like, I wasn't feeling the physics of it as much, and being like, oh, this is looking a little CGI to me. But beyond that, I can absolutely still see why they were doing it. It's just that not every one of those shots was like really immersing me as much as some of the other ones were. So it was kind of, I think it went like 50-50 for me.
That's totally fair. That is one of the few things I bumped on, was Yeah, I remember in one of those POV shots, I was like, it's kind of giving PS5 game like a little.
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah.
some grass in one of those space stations. I was like, okay, all right. I was like, well, again, I'm not dwelling on it. I won't get caught up in the the granular.
Right.
I was like, all right. I was like, that's well, it's earned a pass, but I totally
We'll forgive.
yeah.
And there's also,
You know what?
I
I'll
just
forgive
wanna
it because
say-
the VFX were so good.
Yes.
Yeah, there was one bit where the movie started to worry me. I'll be completely honest.
Mm.
That is right after she loses Clooney. She's calling out to him,
Mhm.
and out of nowhere, this fire starts,
Mhm.
and she's like jumping around and like trying to dodge the fire for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, did this like? It felt like the movie like just completely turned into like a all out action film rather than a horror film for me.
Mhm.
And I was worried about like the pacing there. Like it felt like the script was like, we need to get her out of here sooner rather than later. So let's create a reason, like a fire just started to get her out of
You
here.
saw the mechanics
that-
a little bit. Mhm.
Exactly. And that was, but I just wanted to like mention that because that was the only time in the movie that I saw the mechanic. The other times, the
Yeah.
movie felt very natural, very like the pacing was brilliant.
Yes.
That was really the only time where I was like, wait, but then the rest of it, I was like, wait, I'm in.
Yeah. Because
Chris.
yeah. Oh yes.
I want to mention this now. This is kind of an abrupt change of gears, but I do want to bring this up because you talked about it a lot. How did you feel about the score?
Yes. Great question.
Thank you so much. I have some thoughts prepared. So okay. While I'm not retracting my previous take of it being a wrongful win over her, I do still believe her should have won. But I do have a newfound appreciation for what the score accomplishes because it's what of Chris's lesson here is that it's a little unfair to compare a score like this to her because this is a score that is function over form. You know, it's not trying to be like it's not trying to be overtly beautiful music, but the score is playing such an important role and it does it so well because it is up to because of the movie and the way it is faithfully, you know, following the fact that there's no noise in space. Like it is up to like this score and like Sandra Bullock's panting to like fill the soundscape during all the set pieces and all those things.
Yeah.
And it has to like communicate all these tonal shifts on just a dime. Like it is just it is just so note perfect in that way. So I have a lot of respect for it. He cooked. He
Yeah.
did a phenomenal.
It kind of reminded me.
Perfect score.
It kind of reminded me of a little bit of kind of what Ludwig Göransson would come to do later on, you know, with stuff.
That's an interesting comparison. I like that.
I did think about Oppenheimer in a little bit about the way it's like the music is intentionally drawing attention to other things. You know, it's like it's trying to propulse things other than itself on the screen. So
yeah. It helps the pacing of the film, to be honest. Like it creates a ticking clock at times, and obviously the sense of dread. But
it's a very hard overall score.
Exactly, but it's like it's not the kind of score where it's like you're going to be listening to like the opening track of the film.
No, yeah, you know? It's like it's almost designed to. I mean, again, aside from maybe that last track, which you mentioned before, and it is a beautiful track. Aside from that, it is designed to not be listened to outside the movie, unless you're like, man, like today's been too relaxing and peaceful. Like, let's just,
I was gonna say, check on your friends if they're listening to the Gravity score by themselves.
I want to have anxiety today.
Yeah. But and one last thing on just the cinematography, because again, like the Oscar was totally earned. That was amazing. I just want to say during maybe the most aside from the when she's floating, it's like the extreme wide shot of Sandra Bullock like spinning and floating back into the abyss. Like aside from which is amazing shot and so freaking scary. It's like the embryo shot when she finally takes off all her gear. It's like the DVD cover. That shot, I'm like watching like the 20 seconds where that shot slowly forms. I'm like, it's like the NBA. This is why we play. I'm like, this is why we make movies, man. I'm like, this is
seriously.
I'm like, is this just what it's all about? Like that is.
How did it formulate so naturally? Is my question. Like that, like to make that look as organic as it did. Blows my mind still.
I mean, it's just because Cuaron is a good director.
It's movie magic. That is. It's such a quiet moment, and again, that's like what takes this movie to another level is those quiet moments. You know, it's not just awesome set pieces, and which I mean the set pieces are enough to make it a really cool film. But
Of course.
but you know,
But yeah, no,
really
you
just
really
elevates it.
that really kind of is the part that gets slept on. Is like all of those quiet moments are so good, right?
Yeah.
100%.
And to call out another quiet moment that was great is the dream sequence with George Clooney coming back.
That is that's the Oscar cheer-worthy moment when George Clooney re-enters the capsule.
You know, I think when I was 13, I might have thought that was real. Like,
Dude, I
a long
remember
time.
thinking for a second.
I did when I was 13. I was just like, we are so bad. We have never been more bad. And then we are right now with George.
When he tells you, he's like, it was a hell of a story, you're just like,
I was like, I'm sure it was, George. Like, and that's and we talked about the CGI a bit, and I really want to dive into that right now and how Cuaron's so masterful with it. And we, you know, and this kind of collates with our actor discussion is that one note that I wrote while watching, I just said the humanity makes the CGI world real. And that's in a quote Alfonso Cuaron said, he like all he said when he was talking with his VFX team, he just said, like, if you believe the faces and you believe the actors, everything else falls into place. And that's, and also it's a testament to like his ability to pull these performances in these like these minimalist sets. Like, again, they're just in like a white cube and he's just like, again, it's just such a feat of acting, directing to get them to understand the stakes and what exactly is happening in the screen. And like, in CGI, this is such a textbook example. And you can say this about, you know, we've made a lot of Avatar comparisons already, and this applies to it well. Like, it's not just like good CGI is not just a matter of, you know, like it looking crisp and having good technology. It's like, it's the implementation and the intention behind it, like Mateo was saying, and how it's being used. And I was watching a behind the scenes thing with the VFX team who worked on it. And part of the reason, like, even though when they got the task, they were like, no, this is impossible. They were like, this movie is not feasible. Like, this is impossible. Yeah. Even though it was so daunting, they were so excited to work on it because of how involved Alfonso Cuaron was. Like, it wasn't just, he was like, you know, he didn't just ship off the footage and say, okay, like, you know, here's 6 months, get it back to me. Like, he was in the trenches with the VFX team, and it was so exact with what he wanted. And that's how you get something like this. You know, you don't just like, you know, because Marvel's been criticized so much for CGI lately, and that's just because they'll, you know, ship it off to some studio and they'll want 5 different iterations, and it's just a lack of intention, and they're working with twice the budget, and they're not getting half, you know, as good of results. So I think it's just,
it really is like
be the textbook for how, if you want to have CGI in your movie, you should probably be studying like this and Avatar and, you know, other stuff like that. Again, your movie doesn't have to be this heavy on CGI, but like, this is the blueprint.
Because it's like, it's the same thing really with, I think, with editing and with like anything else. Like, the more involved and the more the director cares about each process of the craft of the film, I think you just get a better result. That's just how it is. Like,
it's just a wholly realized vision, you know. And we talked about how Gravity is 80% CGI, like, which is insane, because especially against Avatar's 60%. Now, I was thinking about watching, it's like it's almost brilliant in a way, because a lot of times when you say something is bad CGI, it's because of the discrepancy between what's real on the screen and what isn't. And it's just like, okay, it's like the scenes are so easy, but when everything's CGI, it's like, like there's no discrepancy. It's like you're never pulled out of the film, because it's just like you're kind of living in it. And so I was like, okay, that's almost like a clever workaround. But again, it still has to look so good. But I just thought that was, you know, an interesting thing to observe.
And I think, again, when the light, like I brought it up before, when the light interacts, like I think like bad CGI, a lot of times it's like the way that the light interacts with like backgrounds or like textures like looks weird, and like the crispness that they got. It's just like, it's perfect.
No, that's a great point. And it took a long time. Like, you know, intention goes a long way, but again, it takes time. And that was something I heard about for the making of Sunshine, another space movie from 2007, which I absolutely love and adore and would recommend to anybody. But that CGI is like weirdly good and crisp for, you know, I think for a 2007 space movie. But like, it was on the Blank Check podcast, they were talking about like why it looks so good. And that's just because like they just let they gave the VFX team so much time. Like they finished it in like 05 or something like that. Gave the VFX team like a year and a half to work on it. Like they just did not rush them at all. And it came out in 07. And that's part of it too. Gravity took 4 years to make. You know, it's if you want to have CGI in your movie, you have to be patient as well. And that's again, and not the Marvel. Like our deadline is November. Like let's. Like, I hope you didn't want to go home tonight. You know, let's
Oh boy, but they're earning those strikes. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. But yeah, there's just so much to love in this movie. I have a little note of just like miscellaneous kind of just things I loved. For some reason, a small moment that I'm like, that's just again like this is what it's all about. I'm just eating this up. Is when Sandra Bullock, when she's trying to untether her like escape pod from the station, and you just see the debris is starting to hit the station, but she can't hear it. Again, it's like because of the simple there's no sound space, so you're like turn. It's like the Walter White car meme, like trying to shout at Hank. He's like, Hank, the debris hit the station. It's like turn around, but like, and it's just such an amazing little choice.
I mean, I have a small moment when George and Sandra are trying to get they do the one propel and to grasp onto the ship, and they're going through the whole like trying to grasp onto something. There's one moment where Sandra, her foot's tangled, so she's all good. George is trying to like grab her hand, and he says, "Give me 5." I'm like, this dude has the confidence to be like cracking jokes, like, but in a non-Marvel way where it's like so endearing.
But it's like because George Clooney is the only one who can do that. He's the
exactly. Just stuff like that.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Again, it's an unexpectedly snappy and kind of quippy script, and it works. You know, it's all earned. You know, you can
Joss Whedon at the height of his powers.
No,
yeah.
It's like yes. Even in a movie as like sometimes bleak as this one, like again, levity is still possible. I don't know if we talked about this in the pregame at all, but some of the like almost like pseudo criticism this movie came under fire for was the like scientific accuracy. And like I'm gonna be honest, like whoever's going to the movies or to Gravity for no perfect scientific accuracy, it's like I'm sure you're just a hoot at parties. I'm sure. That's like it's just so not the point. I'm sure there, maybe there were some flaws with the debris, but again, it's like not the point.
People only ask those questions when they care about the movie. You know, it's like it's almost just like a product of its success, really.
It's like a self-defeating. Yeah, that they care that much about it.
Because nobody's asking those questions about like a shitty movie that no one cares about.
That's a great point. That's absolutely a great point. What I want to get to now, we talked about the film and the filmmaking and just all the things we loved about it. And so now let's just get to a kind of like broader conversation just about, again, just where this movie lies for us and why now that, we all watched it and we really, really enjoyed it. Why do we think, that the movie is kind of viewed in the way it is now? I would love to just throw something at you guys right now, because I was given a good like 1 a.m. think about this last night, because I'm like, this movie's like so undeniable and so it's just so like clearly good. I'm like, how could anyone kind of grow lukewarm on it? Really, what I got to was that like Gravity doesn't need your fandom or your advocacy. Like this movie does not need to speak up for it. Like, not just because of all the praise it's already received, but like the movie just kind of speaks for itself, Like this is a movie that is so able to be appreciated by anybody that like, I have a list of movies. I'm like, I think I can just recommend these to anybody. Like if someone says, I need a movie to watch, I'm like, you can watch this. I can safely recommend this and you'll enjoy it. I think this goes on that list. And I wish I had a better word, but it's just so broadly terrific that it's not it's not a movie of like idiosyncrasies, and this is why like you won't see it on anyone's like Letterboxd top 4. And I don't mean that as a knock on quality, but like this isn't a movie that could be like super like it can't be Sebcore or Chriscore, because it's just like the group of people it's applying like that, like it's targeting, and that like it's trying to get
everybody. It's
just anyone with a pulse. Like it's just like because it's just so easily and enjoyable and admirable. and is approaching these like really huge themes that like anybody can relate to, you know, and which is like kind of like, you know, what you should be doing if you're making a big like high budget movie, and that's probably why it made so much money. And I do think a lot of that can apply to Avatar in a way. It's just like it's just worldwide appeal, you know, and like I mean, there are some like crazy Navi diehards and stuff like out there. It's like they're trying to like lucid dream in Pandora. But yeah, it's almost as if like the lack of controversy has like hurt it in a way. It's just like, yeah, like it's just good and anybody can enjoy it. And
I do want to like bring up like one point also, because I did really like the movie. I thought it was pretty fantastic. I don't think it's quite as perfect as some of the reviews at the time described it as. So like, do I think it's the best space movie ever made? No. Like, I don't think it's as good as 2001. I don't think if I gave like, it might not be better than Interstellar if I gave that a rewatch. I don't know.
But,
valid. And I think that might also be part of the reason why, is because I think like for a movie to kind of get into that echelon of like immortality, I think it has to be like remembered almost as like a perfect movie, right? Like, because like, you know, I think like There Will Be Blood is like kind of like movie that's kind of, you know, like Oscar bait, like got a ton of awards and like is like in that echelon of immortality. And I think it's because it is really a cut above and it's that much better. And Gravity for me, you know, it has its seams. Like it has its seams. Like there, you know, like there's some stuff that it's like, okay, this like screw is like floating towards the camera because 3D in 2013.
I wanted to make a quick comment. I'm just like in the very beginning, I was like, I bet that went hard in 3D. Like I was the grip that like water droplets had on 3D artists. Just like if you could have a floating drop of water in your 3D movie, you do it. Like that's all of them had it. But no, yeah, continue.
So you know, like just like things like that. Like I think the very end of the movie, like when she's getting out of the pod, like the score and like her getting up, like there's elements to it that I think are maybe a little like hokey, not to like be too harsh on it, but like and I think when she's like calling that like random person on Earth, like that scene doesn't do all that much for me.
But my only other like bump in the movie was it did feel a little bit like in the third act the bag of tricks was running a little low. You know what I'm saying? If that scene where she's talking to the person, it's like, oh, get the dog to bark again. It's like, I do really like that scene, but it does feel like maybe if that's, you know, it's like a scene like that, if that was just like, you know, like a hair above, a tick above, it's like, maybe it does enter that echelon for us. I think once she re-enters the atmosphere, I think the film kind of reloads, and by the time it cuts to black, I'm like, okay, like it did stick the landing, like the story is going, like it is really good. But I did again a little wobbly in that third act, and so I think maybe that's what's preventing us from maybe being like, okay, like you know, this should be on the end of decade lists. I do understand why it received the praise that it did at the time because of what I said earlier, the whole like, what else is there like this, you know? And sometimes that is enough for people. Just like it's just a one-of-a-kind movie, and it's masterful, and we should be grateful for something like this, you know. But there are some bumps.
It's rough to say that it wobbles, especially in the third act, for an hour and a half movie. That's like, it's just part of what makes, you know, movies rewatchable and, you know, keep a grip in your mind, is that there are layers of subtext that makes you want to think about it more or revisit. And that's maybe a level of depth that maybe Gravity lacks, even though it is character based, there is a story beyond just the action. It is still a very straightforward film. I don't think it's a gimmicky film by any means, and it probably got unfairly labeled as such as the years went on. And it probably did get labeled that because of its straightforwardness. It's not trying to trick you. Like it's not trying to go in any different way. It's like what it's giving you is what you get. And so that's probably what has hurt it in a lot of ways, because Cuaron is known for the depth and like the subtlety. And so for him, they're like, this is pretty surface level for Cuaron. So I don't know. That's my personal theory. Just to do a quick bit on that.
But I will say the first hour is it does feel pretty perfect. Like it is
Absolutely
airtight. Like that is just it's kind of bulletproof filmmaking. It feels like in a way. And I just want to say, as opposed to like, I don't know if I fully agree on the surface level aspect. You know, because again, I do like the ideas it's getting at, and I like the debris metaphor and all those things. And I will say personally is that like, and one thing I wasn't expecting to be feeling when leaving it is that like, because I'm a big physical media guy. You know, I've flipped through many a Blu-ray section, and I've seen a lot of Gravity copies, and I've never bought it because I'm just like, because I remember thinking, I was like, is this really like, is this a rewatchable movie? Like, is this, you know, like, is this something I can just throw on? I will say that after watching it last night, like next time I see in one of those bins, like I think I will be snagging.
You're snatching it
solely for the value of just like, I just want to experience some of those set pieces again, and then
Sure.
and it's all worthwhile again because of those quieter moments. So I do think I will say I was surprised by the revisiting value, but I do totally get what you're saying in the sense that it's like the full course meal is there. Is that that is one of its strengths and pros in so many ways. It's just like you will leave fully satisfied, but that does, you know, maybe hurt it in the long run in the terms of just like, you know, like its willingness to not be in controversy or further discourse or buzz, because it's just all right there. Yeah. So it's a trick. It's you know, a double-edged sword in a way, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's still a great film, and that should be the number one, you know, most important thing. But
I don't know. I think there is some thematic value and depth to the film. I would have liked it if it didn't have it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to diminish that at all. I think what I was just saying is that the rebirth arc that she goes on is what the movie is about, and you're, you know, and if you explore that there is some richness to that, but the film is very head on tackling that, and there isn't any like subplots or anything. It's literally just that. So that's what I mean by that. There's not a lot of like,
it's easy
subtlety.
To digest.
Exactly. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
But hey, I mean, it's an awesome movie, and I'm glad we all enjoyed it.
We loved it though.
We again, I finished it last night, and I texted these boys and I said, if there are no Gravity fans left on Earth, it means I have died. Like it means I am no longer here. If I ever hear some Gravity slander, I will go to bat. You know, this is a movie. If we had to give this movie a label, it's like, what's our takeaway? I think mine would just be I would just say taken for granted. I would say taken for granted. I think that's my ultimate. That's my thesis.
Second that. I will second that.
Yeah. I wish I could tell people, like, it's not just the debris is spinning around the Earth. It's also like Sandra Bullock and George Clooney are like tethered together, like watching where everybody lives in this like beautiful little ball, and they're talking about life, and that's beautiful too. And that's what the movie. That's really those parts of the movie are like. I don't know, man. I think people forgot about them, and we lost a great movie. I think, you know.
We're talking about like it died.
That made me give a deep exhale right there. That is. I'm gonna be thinking about that one tonight. We lost a great movie. Wow. Alfonso, we have failed you. And even moments. Again, just a little moment. It's like. I forget where exactly in the film it happens, but it's just like you're watching Sandra Bullock, and then the camera goes to this extreme wide, and it just pans over, and you see like the aurora lights going over Earth. I'm like, he's just flexing right now. Like this is like it's just movie magic. And I get what James Cameron was saying when he was like, it's the best space photography ever, and it's just you know, Earth has never been maybe a character quite, at least in a space movie, maybe like it is here, and it's. I just love the way it just depicted. Any last remarks? Anything still on the old mind that you guys want to say?
I'm happy with this. I'm so glad we chose this as our first movie. So
yeah, absolutely.
Keep it simple.
It's kind of a spiritual film almost sometimes. Like you got that little like. I wish I knew more about like Buddhism, but like. When she gets to the Russian, when she gets like the Soyuz, I think it's called. You have the little icon of Christopher, who's the patron saint of travelers,
Oh,
and then
yeah,
you have
yeah.
like the little Buddha statue, and it's like you have these people from all these different parts of the world like grasping onto something for meaning, and and she doesn't really have that, and this movie is kind of her quest to find that, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's 1,000% recommend is the short of it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah,
No,
it's so good.
I'm fully with you there, and I love there, and they're like, and again, it's like you said, like the script is just like there are lines that are just gonna stick with me. It's like when she's and kind of into the spiritual thing you're talking about is when she's just talking about death, and she's just like I'm gonna die today. She's like I didn't like and like even though I know that, it's just like it's the way she's talking about it in such a matter of fact and simple way. Is just so I don't know, just so resonant in some way, and just
Yeah.
and when Clooney again in the theater reacts Clooney returned moment in that conversation when he's just like you just have to go back and just like put your feet on the ground and start like living life again, and it's just like like
Well,
man,
he was
like,
giving her, he was giving her the option of like
pep talk, yeah,
because he said like, listen, your kid died, like I get it, like it doesn't get
it's
rougher
bad,
than that.
yeah.
So like, but he's like, so you could either turn the lights off and do what you're doing right now, or you can get up and keep going. And like basically just gives her like
I'm getting goosies right now. Like
It's
I
so
mean,
beautiful.
that is
It's
just
really so beautiful.
it
yeah,
really is.
and it's like you said, it's very simple and it's straightforward, but it hits its mark every time,
and
that's the best
everyone
part.
can relate to it, and yeah, and everyone it's like
Yeah.
it's easy up here, but like it's worth choosing to go and like and to face the debris and to go and like choosing to live, and it's just man, it does the thing, you know. It just the movie just does it, and again, it's like, and I have that itch now. It's like I just kind of want to search up. It's like space station gets destroyed, and just like remember just watch that again. Like
just rewatch the scene
so
again.
arresting. Like when she's just like, or that one when she's just like spinning around, and everything's just destroying. It's kind of like in Rogue One when like the Hammerhead ship like makes sort of crash into each other. It's like again, it's so like horrific and beautiful, and it's just it's incredible. Gravity's an awesome movie. I'm glad we watched it. Again, if you want other potential space wrecks that maybe you haven't seen, Sunshine 2007 with Cillian Murphy, amazing film. Cannot recommend that enough. Or if you want more George Clooney in space action, Steven Soderbergh's Solaris in 2002, incredible film. That actually might be my favorite Clooney performance because he's just like maybe the most vulnerable I've ever seen him. But amazing movie. Cannot recommend those enough. So if you're still listening this far, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for our first episode. If you like this, and you know you'll be getting more of us soon, hopefully. And just to tease
Tell your
up the
friends
next
about the Postscript.
Yeah, please follow us on Instagram or on TikTok if you aren't already. Gravity episode 1 done. Next episode already cooking. Just to tease it up, will be Incredibles 2, a film that many of us have seen, many of us have opinions on, but how good is it? How good is Incredibles 2? Because I've never heard an opinion other than it's not as good as the first, you know. But how good is this film? So yeah, so stay tuned for that. Hope you guys are looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll
can't wait.
We'll see
Screenslaver awaits.
Screenslaver awaits the Postscript.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys.